webinar control panel to allow all attendees to hear you. This system will notify you once you begin your broadcast. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning to everyone. I had a few issues to log into the system. And a very happy new year to everyone. We're going to start today's session. Hope my voice is clear. Hope my voice is clear for everyone. Yeah, thank you. So, first of all, I would like to recap what you've seen in the previous session. That's on Friday. On Friday session, we started with Smart Data Access. Smart Data Access is mainly used to connect to non-SAP systems. So at the HANA Studio, when you expand data provisioning, you find remote sources. When you right click on the remote source, create new remote source, you have different remote sources like MS SQL, Oracle, Netezza, DB2, Sybase, HANA, Hadoop. These are different sources of data to which we can connect smartly to access data from source system at the runtime of the user execution, at the runtime of the user query. So during the runtime of the user query, the request goes via the smart data connection, access data from source table. In SAP HANA, we create a virtual table. Virtual tables are those tables which only have metadata. It's only a container without content. It's called a table, it's called virtual tables. They only have containers without contents. We create virtual table containers based on the source structure. On top of these virtual tables, we create calculation views and access these calculation views in the user interfaces. So that's we see in the previous session. So today we see, so until now we see SLT for real-time flat file import directly to SAP HANA, business objects data services, how we can transform data, and finally we have seen smart data access. That's on Friday. Today we see DXC. DXC stands for direct extractor connection. So we'll see first of all what is the use of DXC and when we have to use DXC. DXE, direct extractor connection. So when can we implement DXE? Now traditionally we know systems are divided into one for writing and the other one for read optimization. Systems which are optimized for writings of data, these are called as you know, OLTP systems. And systems which are optimized for reads of data, these are called as OLAP systems. So in this category, ECC, in this category, BW, Business Warehouse. So ECC is under OLTP and BW under OLAP. But HANA, as we know, it's a combination of OLTAP. So we don't require two systems. We only require one system which is optimized for both writes and reads of data. HANA can do both writing and reading of data, whereas ECC writes and BW reads. So traditionally what we used to do, we used to copy data from this system to this system. This is for writes and this is for reads. Now both writes and reads can happen directly on SAP HANA. Okay, suppose say a customer has ECC and they also have BW. Now they would like to implement SAP HANA. So this scenario is valid for DXE. So when a customer is implementing DXE is because they have ECC, they have BW and they have HANA. They have three systems. But what they want to do now, they want to bypass this system. They don't anymore require BW. They want to bypass BW. So whatever the data that used to go to BW, now they want to bypass it and get this to SAP HANA. So simply to say, they would like to go for a read optimization and write optimization to be taking place in SAP HANA. But still we require BW. We require BW. Technically we require BW only to bypass to SAP HANA. Otherwise there is no need of BW, but technically we require here. The customers who are already using ECC, BW, and now they would like to go for SAP HANA. For them, the solution is DXE. So how many customers do we have in BW? In 3 lakh, approximately 3 lakh 35 to 3 lakh 50,000 customers, there are about 14,000 customers who are using BW. So DXE is suitable for those 14,000 customers who are using BW. For only for them, DXE is useful. Otherwise, DXE is not necessary. So when you're working on a project, if the customer has BW in those 14,000 customers, then we can use DXE. So what is the purpose of DXE? To bypass existing BW and get data to SAP HANA. So technically how this is possible? Let us see. Let's see how technically we can do this. ECC, BW, HANA. So from ECC to BW, the communication is RFC. So both the systems communicate via remote function call. Now if you want to take the data to SAP HANA, we use the communication method is HTTP. So it uses HTTP protocol. So data gets transferred from ECC to BW using an RFC connection remote function call. Whereas data from ECC to SAP HANA gets transferred using a HTTP protocol. So you can transfer data using web applications. Using web application, we can transfer data from ECC to SAP HANA using HTTP connection. So in ECC, so we have tables which physically store data. You have tables. So all these are tables. Now, suppose say you would like to join these tables together and you would like to create one object. So all these tables can join together inside ECC system based on few join conditions. Based on few conditions, we can join all these tables together and create an object called data source. It's called as data source. What is this data source? Sources of data. So what is the source of data for a data source? Basically tables. Table stores data. Now what is the use of this data source? The use of the data source is BW cannot communicate to tables directly. BW system cannot communicate to these tables directly. It can only communicate to data source. A data source communicates to these tables in the backend. So data source is like a transporter which transports data from source to target. So it is basically getting the structure, the metadata. So here you have few columns, here you have few columns, here you have few columns. So all these columns you put in a single data source and get this data source via RFC connection to BW. Simply to say, a data source is again a container. It's basically a container. This container is built on tables. and these data sources we get to BW using an RFC. So ECC data source and BW data source communicate to each other. Okay, so now BW communicates to ECC using an RFC connection, and in the source system we communicate to an object called data source, and these data sources are also known as extractors. Extract data from source to target. It's called extractor, means they extract data from where? From ECC to BW. So this is generally I'm speaking what a BW system can do. So two main points here. ECC optimized for writes, BW optimized for reads. Both the systems communicate using RFC connection via an object called data source. Data source, in other words, it's extractor. Now once we get these extractors to BW, we need to get data into this data source. First we bring only the metadata, only the container. Now we need to get data into these data sources. To get data inside this data source, we use an object called, to get data inside the data sources, we use an object called info package. So info package is an object that is used to transfer data from source to target. Info package means packets of information. So how data is transferred? Using info packages. So info packages are the objects which can transfer data. So now, what is data source? Container. To this container, to get data, nothing but the content. Which object transport content? Info package. So data sources are containers. To get data, nothing but content. Into these containers, we seek help from info package. So now we know purpose of data sources and we know purpose of info package. Info package to transfer content, and data source purpose is it has the container information, nothing but the metadata. Okay, so now we have content and container. Now the next thing is we need to get these containers and content. We need to get these containers and content that's in BW. The same thing, that whatever you have here, we need to get them into SAP HANA. Because we no more want the system to be maintained. So whatever the ECC data sources that ECC has, we need to get this ECC data source to SAP HANA. But these are, once you get to SAP HANA, these are no more called as data sources. These are just, in ECC, they may be data, they are data sources, but in SAP HANA, once they come to SAP HANA, these are just column tables. So just like the other tables that HANA has, these are also similar to those tables. These are nothing but column tables. So we know what is the purpose of column table: to store data. Where do you use these column tables? In information views. So whatever the data sources that we are going to get to BW, we no more want to get them to BW, but instead these data sources we would like to get to HANA. So this is traditionally how the systems operate like this. So these are traditional systems. ECC writing and BW read both communicate via RFC, data transferred from ECC to BW via RFC. Once you implement DXC, now HANA will come here. Data sources now will start going to SAP HANA. They'll start creating in SAP HANA. But how they create in SAP HANA? How these column tables are creating in SAP HANA? Based on the structure of a data source in BW. Without getting these data sources to BW, we cannot create these column tables. So the main point here is, important point here is, can we use DXC without BW? No, we cannot use. Even though we bypass BW system, we no more want to maintain data inside the BW system, but still we require BW system. Why we require BW system? Because the structure of data sources that are inside the BW system, based on this structure, these tables are created. So what is step number 1 here? Step number 1 is to transfer data sources from ECC to BW. Only once you transfer these containers, and when you activate these containers, then only you can see these column tables over here. If you don't bring these containers here, we cannot see them here. So data sources from BW, we need to get these data sources as column tables. Only once you get them to BW. So main point here is, whatever it may be, data sources, whether we use BW, whether we don't use BW, we need to get data sources to BW. Then only we can create column tables in SAP HANA. Whether we use or don't use, we need to maintain here. Then only we can get these column tables over here. Okay. Now we know data sources are here. We brought them to BW. And from here, we need to bring them to SAP HANA. Once you bring here, they are column tables. And all these three are same. Whatever you have here, you have here. Whatever you have here, you have here. Now, next is data. How can we get data that is here, but data will not go here? Once you execute an info package, when DXC is enabled, and then you execute an info package, instead of getting like this, instead of getting data like this, it will go like this. So just to conclude, column tables are created in SAP HANA. How they are created? Based on the structure of data sources in BW. The structure of data source in BW are created based on structure of data source in ECC. So data sources come like this. Now once we execute the info package, which is used to transfer data, once you execute them, the data comes like this. The data comes like this. So once you get data here, now you can use them inside the information views. So how the other column tables, these are also same column tables. But a little difference is there. These are column tables, they create column tables. But how many column tables are created for each data source? So for one data source, they create 5 tables. So when you get these data sources to SAP HANA, inside HANA system, they basically create, if you try to zoom this, if you try to zoom SAP HANA, they're creating 5 data sources. Sorry, they're creating 5 tables for one data source. So these are the 5 tables that each data source create. So the name of these 5 tables end with 00, 40, 70, 80, AO. 00, 40, 70, 80 and AO. So these are the 5 tables. So I'll ask few questions now. DXC stands for direct extractor connection. Can we directly communicate tables from ECC to BW? No. Tables need to be associated to data sources, and data source can communicate to BW using which type of connection? Remote function call. Once you get these data sources to BW, once you activate these data sources in BW, for each data source, 5 tables are created. Once we activate this, 5 tables are created in SAP HANA. 00, 40, 70, 80 and AO. All these are 5 tables. Each table has a name. Each of these tables has a name. Active data table. The second table is called as activation queue table. And all these 3 tables put together, they are called as control tables. Control tables. Okay. So we know once you activate these data sources, 5 tables are created in SAP HANA. And these 5 tables start with 00, 0, 40, 70, 80, AO. 00 is called as active data table. 40 is known as activation queue table. 70, 80 are called as control tables. So all these 5 tables are created. Where they'll be created? Where these 5 tables are created in best schema. So basically they create in some schema. The name of the schema is best. Please see, I'll just show you how these tables are visible. Let's log into remote desktop. Let's log into HANA Studio. Right click on tables. Okay, so here you see, for example, let us take customer. So zero customer is the name of the data source. So for zero customer, 00, 40, 70, 80 AO. You see this. So these are the 5 tables that are created. 00, 40, 70, 80 AO are basically these are control tables. So whenever you get these data sources to SAP, whenever you activate these data sources, these 5 tables are created. So these tables have naming convention /BIC or they have BIO. So the naming convention is BIC/A. This is the name of the data source. Zero customer. So this is the name of the data source. Zero customer is the name of the data source. So all these are name of the data sources. So basically, simply see, for each of this table, this is same. Only the last 2 numbers are different. Everything is same except the last 2 number, 00, 40, 70, 80. Rest everything is same. So what is rest? This one. This is nothing but the name of the data source, and this is the standard naming convention that SAP maintains in order to recognize these are DXE tables. So how do you recognize when you see these are DXE tables? when they start with /bic/a, the name of the data source underscore attr and the unique number 400047. So all these tables created for how many data sources? Only for one data source. If you have 5 data sources, they create 25 tables. Okay, so now we know these are created in SAP HANA. Now how these tables get data? Please see. When I right click on 00 table and open data preview. So for now we don't have any data in this. So how do we get data into these tables? We get data into these tables by executing info package. So in this we have in 00 table I have this data. So how did I get this data to these tables? When I execute this info package, now where is this info package? It's on the BW system. So once I execute this info package via RFC, it goes to data source, and data source fetch data from these tables, and from here the request is sent to HTTP, and from HTTP first data goes to 40 table. First it goes to 40, then it goes to 00 table. So whenever you execute info package via the RFC connection, it goes to data source. Data source get data from tables. Via HTTP connection, first data comes to 40, from 40 it comes to 00 table. So first it comes to 40. What is 40 table? 40 is called as activation queue table. 40 is called as activation queue table. From 40 it goes to 00 table. Now how data is transferred between this table and this table? How data is transferred from 40 table to 00 table? That's automatically taken care by system. System takes care on how data can be transferred from 40 to 00. The transferring of data from 40 to 00, it's called as activation of data. It's called as activation of data. So activation of data is nothing but transferring of data from 40 to 00 table. Okay, let me conclude this topic. So today we started with DXC. DXC stands for Direct Extractor Connection. The use of DXC when a customer is already using BW, now he wants to implement SAP HANA. Whatever the data that is going to BW, now we want to transfer to SAP HANA. Step number 1, get ECC data sources to BW. Once you activate them, these 5 tables are created. In order to get data into these 5 tables, we need to execute info package. Once you execute info package, data goes to data source via HTTP connection, transfer data to 40, 40 is activation queue table. From here, data transfer to 00 with the process called as activation of data. That is automatically taken care by system. It's automatically taken care by system. Finally, a 00 tables are what we're going to use inside the information views. The 00 tables are what we're going to use inside the information views. And once you create these information views, we can access data as usual, how we were doing for SLT, BODS, just like. So what is the difference between SLT, BODS and DXC? There you get real time. BODS you get data using batch process. But for DXC, we need to have BW. BW is the middleware here. Like SLT, SLT is the middleware. For BODS, BODS is the middleware. But with help of what we are getting data to SAP HANA? With whose help are we getting data to SAP HANA? Using BW's help. Yes, we are not using BW, but still we are seeking its help to get data to SAP HANA. That's why BW is a middleware. It's in the middle of ECC and SAP HANA. And that's why BW is required for DXC. So for practical, so tomorrow what we'll do is, we'll see the configuration part. First we need to configure the systems. So how we need to configure, and once we configure, how we need to transfer. Once the configuration is complete, then we see how we can transfer data to SAP HANA in tomorrow's session. Any questions? Please post your questions. Thank you. Yes, I think participants not able to log into ECC. License is over, so I'll apply the license, and by afternoon the ECC will get up. By afternoon the system is up. DXC is a connection. DXC is just a connection. DXC is not a tool. Smart Data Access and DXC both are connections. SLT is a tool. BODS is a tool. SLT, BODS, these are tools. But Smart Data Access, DXC, these are free. Freely available. We can just use them. No licensing cost. Just we have to enable them and we have to use them.